iPhone 15 Pro Max and iPhone 14 Pro Max. Is there much difference and is it worth upgrading? Well, in this video, we're gonna compare the design, the performance, the camera, the speakers, and all the new features that other reviewers did not test or talk about. After going back and forth from this phone, the first thing that I get to realize that's the biggest difference is the weight. It is 10% lighter, but once you go back to the 14 Pro Max, you do feel the weight difference. It's a lot more comfortable to hold, especially because of the curved edges as well. And I did mention it before in my previous video that if you're deciding to go caseless, this is the year to do it. And now we've got a new titanium build across the edges. Whilst in the previous version, it was a glossy stainless steel, easily to pick up fingerprints. But now on the titanium version, even though I've got the black design, which is known for picking up fingerprints, this one is still picking up less fingerprints than the last year's model. When you put both models next to each other, you do notice that the 15 Pro Max is slightly smaller, but the screen size is still the same and you're getting that 6.7 inches. Now that you've got the same screen size and a smaller phone, you do notice that the bezels are a lot smaller. But other than that, the screen itself is identical. The brightness is the same. It peaks the same, and you're still getting that HDR video display. And every year when they decide to release a new iPhone, they do tend to improve the speaker system. And now when it comes to the speakers for the iPhone 15 Pro Max, they are a lot more bassier, louder, and tend to produce better quality sound. So just to show an example of what the speaker system sounds like on both models, this is an example here. To be fair, on a daily use now, I tend to go half volume because I feel like that's enough for me. But before, even like my iPhone 12 Pro Max, every time I'm using it, the full volume was not enough. One thing that I was a bit skeptical is every year Apple decides to kind of name drop like the battery performances have gone better or something. But this year they didn't do it on paper. But as they added that extra battery size and then provided that nanometer chip, you'd think that the battery life would last a lot longer. Surprisingly, on heavy usage, around 11 PM, it drops to 20%. And that's not bad. Compared to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, same usage, it would end up dying. And I would say this year again, they've improved the battery. Mr. Who's the Boss did a great test showcasing this. Pretty much the iPhone 15 Pro Max got 1 hour extra compared to the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now he did show gaming in his test as well. So if you're an individual that doesn't game on their mobile phone, your battery life could potentially last a lot longer. Now when it comes to the port, they decided to get rid of the lightning cable. I believe personally this is a good thing. Nowadays, majority of the devices tend to have a Type-C port. So it's easier now to have that one single cable that you can carry around and charge anything that you've got. But one of the biggest improvements that they've done with this cable is by providing a faster data transfer. You can get up to 10 gigabytes per second now. And a great use case in this is now that they're pushing out ProRes, once you've enabled this on your camera, these files are massive. Sometimes you might not even have the space to record in your phone. So basically by plugging in an SSD drive, you can simply store all your files proper fast. And then after you're done with it, just take it to your MacBook, your laptop, and just plug it in and dump it all there. Adding this port is a great thing, but the only thing that would probably annoy me now is a lot of people asking for cables. I used to have so many Samsung people coming up to me saying, "Yo, have you got a spare cable?" I used to be like, "Nah, but I got iPhone." But now we're sharing. I previously spoke about how I was upset that they were getting rid of the mute button. Well, basically my mobile device is majority of the time on silent mode. Sometimes it saves me in certain situations where my phone should be on silent, so I can just quickly put it off. But now they decided to have the action button where you can customize it to whatever you want. And I was a bit skeptical with this. And I used to think, okay, if I accidentally press it, is it gonna just remove me off silent in my pocket? But you actually have to hold it to activate it, and yet you're still not going to lose that mute functionality. So if you still want to keep it as mute, you can do so. But personally now, after using it, I think this is a good thing because now Apple is allowing their users to customize the device even more. And what I've done currently, I've set up a set of shortcuts. As soon as you press onto the action button now, you're going to get everything that I like to do. So my mute, my ring mode, they're all there. I can even ask ChatGPT to do something. If I've got a video idea, I just press on that and then it will just jot it down on a specific notes folder. I've got a focus-based shortcut, so depending on what focus mode I'm in, as soon as I press it, it will do that certain thing that I might want to happen in that specific focus mode, or if I need to go back home and I don't know my way around the area, I can just press drive home and then it's gonna open up my favorite navigation app. And then at the simple, I can just create a task and it'll add it to my to-do list. And now having the option to have this all come up under this one button is very useful. I didn't know I was gonna like it this much. Like I don't know why I was upset that the mute button was gone. Now I'm happy. And I've also realized all these shortcuts can still be interacted with whilst the phone is locked, which is nice. And this is an example of what I've done with the action button myself. If you've done something crazy or something similar, comment down below because I want to know what other people are doing with it. Now talking about performance, I've got Geekbench 6 open. As the iPhone 15 line is still new, all the device information is not up to date on this app. They're both running on the latest iOS. The 14 Pro Max has got A16 Bionic chip, whilst the iPhone 15 Pro Max has the A17 Pro chip. There's an increase in RAM. The iPhone 14 Pro Max has 5.49 gigabytes, whilst the iPhone 15 Pro Max has 7.46 gigabytes. So let's start off with the CPU benchmarks. As you can see, you'd expect an increase here. So the iPhone 14 Pro Max got 2,645 score on the single core, and it's got 6,862 on the multi-core. There's about 300 score increase on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, with the single core as 2,909 and the multi-core score as 7,308, which is good. You do expect an increase in performance, especially with the new chip that they've placed in. Now let's compare the graphics. On last year's model, we only had 5 cores. This year they've increased it and we've got 6 cores. And there you go, we've got about basically 20% difference. On the A16 chip, you're getting about 23,000, and on the iPhone 15 Pro Max A17 Pro chip, you're getting about 27,000. So when you think about it, when Apple name dropped that the GPU is going to be 20% faster, it pretty much is. Okay, now let's open up 3D Marks. I'm going to run Wildlife Extreme Ultimate Mode. Let's just start off and see what this is. Okay, this is pretty interesting now. As you can see, it's about 2 FPS extra. So you got on the iPhone 14 Pro Max 17 FPS, and then on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, you've got 19.3 frames per second. And what's surprising is when you look at the chart, the iPhone 15 Pro Max at the start was hitting about 30 frames per second. If it stayed at 30 frames per second, that would be like 25% increase. But as the animations start to go on, it starts to drop down. And this is probably why the scores are pretty much close together, because it started dropping down, then made it equally close to each other. Now talking about camera, the biggest difference has to be that 5x zoom. They got rid of that 3x zoom and giving you that 5x, which is about 120 millimeters. But the rest of the camera is pretty much the same. Same sensor, same lenses, everything is exactly the same. But one great feature that they've added is that 24 megapixel on the 15 lineup. So instead of having that 12 megapixel, what it does is it gives you that 48 megapixels cropped down to 24 megapixels. And the great thing is, by you enabling this, the file size are not increasing that much. As you can see, it's saying you're getting 3 megabytes instead of 2, which is not a lot at all. And another good thing is if you're not someone that likes to do a lot of post editing, you can have 48 megapixels hef files. You're getting that small file size and still getting that 48 megapixel image quality. But as the 5x is the main upgrade to the camera, I was actually pretty surprised. Now the quality that comes out of this lens, it's astonishing. Like the details from some of the pictures. But when you compare it to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, I did like a little portrait test on that 1x. When you zoom in, you do notice the detail difference. Like the image here looks a lot nicer on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Like the details, the colors, everything is just popping out a lot more. Now, because the iPhone 14 Pro Max has the default 3x lens, when you try get a 3x lens on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it basically becomes a crop. Now, if you compare both image qualities, you will notice the biggest difference when you zoom in. Like some of the details on the iPhone 15 Pro Max is just disgusting. Like you're looking at it, it just guessing certain information. Sometimes it's just the sharpening thing that it does, it just does it completely wrong. Any text you can see on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you cannot see on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I recommend if you need to zoom in, make sure to take that picture in 5x, because 3x when you're that cropping stuff, it will not do. But when you try look at both of these on a 5x style, the iPhone 15 Pro Max is gonna do so much better. It's got that native lens to do that. As you can see, the details are so much nicer, so much sharper, clear, like the colors, the depth, everything is just looking a lot more rich. Now looking at low lighting on 3x on both of these cameras, I was actually pretty surprised with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. It actually did a pretty good job. I would have thought it was gonna crumble, but it held its ground. Some of the details were still kept, but the iPhone 14 Pro Max is still gonna do better because it's that native 3x lens. To be fair, I even thought the 5x in low light was gonna do bad, but looking at both of these images, they're not that bad. Especially on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, you can considerably see the quality difference as well. The details are showing up, everything's looking a little bit more sharper. So pretty much in these low light situations, you can still produce decent looking quality images. And now back to the 5x lens, you can still take portrait shots, which is basically 120 millimeters, and create that depth effect in the back. And I will tell you, they look amazing. They look stunning. If you zoom into the image, you can see that the contrast, the colors are so much more nicer. You've even got more compression. You can see more of the subject and less of the background. And the crazy thing is, anything distracting you can get rid of and really blur it out, which is a nice thing. But to get the same effect, I used the 3x portrait on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but I had to move it a bit closer. But when you look at this image quality as well, it's stunning and it does look good as well. But the thing is, when you zoom in, there's so much more difference again. With the 5x, there's so much more detail on the subject. When you look at the 3x, it's a little bit more washed, a little bit, or like a little bit kind of cleaned up, got that little bit of a smoother finish. But the thing is, with this 3x lens, they've reused it. Like Apple's been using this 3x zoom for a while. They've even added it to the iPhone 15 Pro model. So if you've got that mobile device, you're gonna stick with that same lens. I was pretty surprised with the actual quality that came out. But the iPhone 15 Pro lineup, they do have that better processing for the images. So the quality of the images are going to be so much better than the last year's model. And one thing that's completely different on this year's model that you can't get in any other model is the fact that you can take any picture and it can still be portrait. You could just simply take a picture, and as you're taking a picture, you'll see that little F aperture symbol bottom left corner, and it's basically gathering all the depth information in the picture. Once your photo is saved, you can just simply click on edit and customize your aperture to your needs. If you want that more bokeh vibe, you can go all the way up, or if you want to fully remove it, you can just simply take it off. So now examining everything from the iPhone 15 Pro Max and comparing it to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, there's a little bit of a refinement. They've improved certain areas. In certain situations, they've decreased it, like the 3x to the 5x. So if you still want to get that 3x vibe, it's better off to do that on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. There's not an overall crazy improvement, and yet Apple's known for this. They're not going to make the next model completely different and 10 times better. And if you're on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, I would not upgrade. There's no point. You've already got a decent phone that can do majority of the same thing. Like if you've seen the performance, it's not that much of a crazy performance. The battery life, you're getting that extra hour. When you're looking at the camera quality, you're still getting decent quality. But I would say if you're from iPhone 13 or below, I highly recommend it, because then you're gonna realize there's a big difference from design to performance to the camera, basically everything. You're gonna realize, okay, I've actually got a better phone. Like I can really see the bigger difference now. I will be keeping the iPhone 15 Pro Max so I can test it even more, the performance, the use case, and then give my in-depth 1 month review. And if you want to see that, so make sure to subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, you're definitely going to enjoy this one as well. So take care, see you in the next one.